about celebrity estates and Selena. um, Now, I grew up in California. I don't know about in other states. I work in obviously New York now, but Selena was a big deal in California. Um, so, all right. So, thanks for joining. We're going to be talking about Selena, the popular artist who sang Como la Flor and Bitty Bitty Bam Bam. I was a big fan in California. I don't know if she was popular out here in New York, but definitely in the Spanish community out there. So I guess we'll just dive right into it. So Selena, if you guys have all seen the movie, unfortunately was murdered by her business manager or band manager when she was only 23 years old. Interestingly, as many of you know, she was married to her bandmate, and so as her husband, and because Selena did not do a will or any estate planning because she was only 23, although she should have done it when she was 18, her husband was entitled to basically all of her estate, 100%. If she had had kids, there would have been a different distribution, but in this situation, the husband was supposed to inherit everything. And then as it turns out, her dad, who we see in the show, who was also a part of the band, and her sister and brother, who were also in the band, we don't know how involved they were, but dad basically got the husband, Chris, to sign away his rights and agree to only 25%, which would have been Selena's share in any of the band profits. So she was technically only 25% member of the band. So it's very interesting, and it put a lot of control on who could use Selena's rights. So dad basically wound up with all the control, all the rights, prevented Chris from doing anything, and a lot of litigation ensued, and here we are today to talk about it. What can we learn from this, Christina?
Yeah, I think this is a really good one. So when she passed away, dad came swooping in and hired an attorney that traveled like 1,200 miles to see him to draw up this like agreement, as you said, for Chris to kind of give over his rights. I think it was something like 15 years later, then there was questions coming about for a show, for rights to a show and rights to Selena's name. And Chris wanted to do some kind of show about her life and about the band. And dad swooped in and said, no, we have this agreement. You can't. And Chris even tried to argue that he was distraught and it was signed under duress because he was a grieving widow and wasn't thinking about these things as the father was. And like you said, a lot of litigation, a lot of attorney fees, a lot of time. And rehashing the past and the sadness that she passed away so young. So I think the biggest thing to take out of this is she was 23, so she was young. Yes, she became famous quickly, but as you said earlier, 18 and over, you should start thinking about your estate plan, having a power of attorney, having a healthcare proxy. 20-something-year-olds have children, getting those things in line. We don't know to this day, and we'll never know, who did she really want to inherit? Did she want her father and her family? Did she want it to be her husband? They were newlyweds. They weren't married 10, 15 years. Maybe she wanted to leave it all to charity. She loved children, and all of her, every time she sung, she always had kids there with her. She was big into her community. So it's really, really important that everybody have estate planning documents. If you don't have them, you allow the state that you live in to dictate who gets your hardworking assets, your estate. And you also, run the risk of family fighting or loved ones fighting over your estate. So it's really, really important to have those.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's like I wish I could say, hey, when you're going to get married and sign your marriage certificate, that's also when you need to do estate planning. Because these things happen, and she might have changed her mind as she got older, and that's a great estate planning can always be updated. It can always be modified, especially as you're younger. I mean, as you're older, if you do some, certain types of planning, there's less modifications available. But for this purpose, thinking about being young, you have an estate when you turn 18. So that's when planning can happen. And, we don't know what, like Christina said, we don't know what Selena would have wanted. The movie certainly portrays her as a family person. The band was in the family. Presumably she would have agreed to this 25-25, deal across the board. But we don't know. Okay, someone's asking, was her estate subject to Texas law? So yeah, she was in Texas. So, and if she resided in Texas at the time she died, then she would be subject to Texas laws. Yeah. Anything else you wanted to add?
No, just again, remember that, you're never too young and never too old to have these. And as Leslie said, most, if not all of these documents can be modified. So at every life-changing event, I always tell clients that, you do documents, but refresh, relook every 5 years, 3 to 5 years. You should be coming in. You should be meeting with your attorney or getting a new attorney to look over your documents. Has anything in your life changed? I mean, look at Selena. Her life changed overnight, and she didn't have a chance to plan. A lot of the celebrities we talk about, Heath Ledger, he was another one who was very young, and he had a child that, he didn't update his documents for. So it's really, really important that any life-changing event that you may have, you go in and see your attorney.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So it's good to learn from it. I mean, her story gets into a lot of like trademark and rights and stuff that we don't really delve into. But, if there's a possibility, if you're an artist or an artist and there's a potential for money to be made while you're alive or even after you're alive, then you also really need to be thinking about who's going to be in charge of your image, who's going to be in charge of the art. And that's one of the things that, when we were researching this, a lot of books wanted to be written about Selena, other movies. Netflix had a whole season prepared, and all of it had to be scrapped because Dad retained all the rights and wouldn't agree to any of it. So, there's lots of considerations, but start by at least meeting with an estate planning attorney, figuring out what you can protect and how you want to distribute it, especially if you don't like the plan that the state has for you. All right. Well, if you have any questions, please feel free to contact us. We'd love to hear them, and get your estate plans done, guys. Thank you.